Hello, Guru Nation. Welcome back to the clinicaltrialsguru.com. I'm in New York City, in Manhattan, with Michelle Cohn from.
I'm from Mount Sinai School of Medicine, New York City.
And Michelle's been involved in research for, how long have you been involved in the industry?
I've been doing clinical trials since 1995.
Wow, so 23 years.
Yes.
That's longer than you and I, Chris.
Yeah, definitely.
So how did you start?
I started as a research assistant, so I was interested in advancing medicine. I knew I did not want to be in the laboratory dealing with mice. I'd rather deal with humans.
Okay.
And I was hired to help populate a database, doing retrospective chart review.
Okay. So like one of those phase 4 studies. Was it a small clinic where you started, mom and pop, or was it was it another hospital?
It was another hospital. It was
Okay.
in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I worked with a clinician who was involved in the first pivotal trials for multiple sclerosis.
Okay.
I wanted to do MS research, and I did that for about 17 years.
Okay. Now, how did you get from college grad to clinical research? Did somebody introduce you to the field, or how did you get exposed to it?
I totally fell into this.
On accident, right?
On accident.
Everybody falls into it on accident, almost. These days you have a little more awareness because of the internet. But yeah, almost everybody I know, including myself, get involved on accident. This is what we tell our students, who hopefully some of them are going to come here and spend some time with you, the ones from New York for the CRA Academy. I tell them just get in somewhere, because there's so many options once you're in. Right, you can go the business route, you can go the regulatory route, you can go recruitment, you can go sponsor level. There's so many different things. If you like tech and software, there's vendors. You can join a vendor and build the next great EDC or the next great CTMS, right? So just get in and you'll see a whole bunch of different options. Okay, so after your start, did you jump around to private clinics?
No, I stayed with the same physician for 17 years.
Wow.
I went from one academic medical center to the next,
Okay.
and then he brought me here to New York to Mount Sinai with him.
Really?
So I moved from research assistant to coordinator to senior coordinator to research manager to grants project manager.
Wow.
So I held a lot of different roles.
All academic type institutions.
All academic.
So you can't really compare to private because you don't have that context, right?
No, I spent 5 years working in Jacksonville at a
Oh,
private
that's right, that's
company.
right. Okay. So what do you like? What's the differences?
Um,
Because I'm all private side. I've never worked in a place like this, although they look similar on the inside, but
yes.
the red tape is different.
I think there's a lot of time involved with getting things started here. I think my goal is to try and start our studies as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
We have about 85 studies in startup right now, so it's
Yeah.
a large portfolio.
Yeah.
I think, the expectation on academic medical centers is that we work too slowly, and I think we do.
Right.
Because when I was in private practice, within 30 days we had the patients in our office being
Right.
ready to see,
Yep.
for that first study visit. I think that's probably the biggest difference. I think academia, pharmaceutical companies automatically come to the clinicians much faster.
Yeah.
I think the marrying of the studies is much easier in this
Right.
environment than
They
in
want
private.
to use Mount
Yes.
Sinai, right? They
Yes.
want to be able to say, hey, we're doing this study at Mount Sinai, as opposed to breakthrough clinical trials, right? It's a little less prestigious than Mount Sinai. So it's funny because from the private industry side, we are in fierce competition to get studies. And it seems like from the academic institution, you could get any study you want, really.
Yes.
But the challenges are different, right? Like there's pros and cons for my setup, and there's definitely pros and cons for Mount Sinai. In your case, the studies come easily, but then execution and operations could be a little trickier than what we have to deal with.
Yes, best case scenario, my studies take 3 to 4 months to start.
Mm-hmm.
From the time we receive the regulatory package to when we're seeing that first patient.
And you really have to, Michelle, we've been talking a couple times before this, and we just had breakfast. She's an intrapreneur, so she's entrepreneurial, but within an organization. So you're looking for creative things you can do to make everything run a little smoother, right?
All the time.
And you're given a certain amount of freedom to do this.
Yes, I think, historically within the institution, the Department of Medicine has always been at the forefront of like paving the path. So from that perspective, I've been given the blessing to kind of do what we need to do to advance our program.
So they set the macro concept, and then you can get in and tweak some of the micros.
Yes.
And even more than that, maybe.
Hopefully.
So CTMS, you guys don't use it?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I'd like to get there. I think probably the best operational program I've implemented is probably electronic signatures and using DocuSign.
Yes.
That has really transformed our
So let's talk about that. How does that work?
It's a CFR Part 11 compliant program. That's the package we bought. They offer two platforms, one that's compliant with the FDA and one that's not. We bought the compliant program.
Go figure.
And at first I was skeptical that the investigators would be inclined to sign into another portal and to actually be having another login and a place to do things, but they realized that we could have signatures much faster, and before I even walk out my door to get to an elevator, the physicians have already signed their documents.
And this is regulatory.
This is for anything that we need a signature on, we could upload into
So
the
even
viewer.
source.
Yep,
Source.
anything if we want signatures on, we utilize the DocuSign for, which has been a great advantage. It gives us, electronic documentation, automatic, fast, contemporaneous.
It's time-stamped.
Yes, it's time-stamped.
So sponsors are okay with this? Maybe theoretically the PI doesn't have to be here to sign something. Is that
That's helped with SAEs, actually.
SAEs? Okay. But something like an informed consent, if they're the ones that are delegated, they would have to do it in person, or you can still have them do the e-source?
Informed consent we usually do in person.
In person,
we
yeah.
prefer that to be
That's
in
a
person.
whole, the consent, the e-consent is a whole nother little niche. There's different vendors working on those things to get those done properly. I always tell sites, because most of my audience are small sites, maybe 8 studies a year max, right? And then they can expand, but until you get to maybe 10 studies, I don't think you need a CTMS. We have a lot of clients that don't even have a study, and they're worried about CTMS systems. And I always tell them, no, don't worry about that until you get successful. Right now, you're not successful. You don't need to be wasting any time thinking about CTMS systems. But you have, 85 studies here?
In startup, yes.
Yeah, so you...
And 60 others, yes.
So for an organization like this, I don't want people to think that I'm not telling you CTMS systems are worthwhile, because I think they are. I don't know how you manage without one, right? Is it all Excel?
Everything's Excel. And really smart, organized people.
But you're thinking of moving to CTMS.
I am hoping the institution will move to CTMS.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do something one-off when the institution has a lot more power as a group to be buying something together to do an implementation together.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of benefits of being associated with an organization like Mount Sinai. Do you utilize, first of all, are you aware of all the resources that are available to you? Does anyone communicate these things? Like when it comes to, let's say, patient recruitment, do they tell you certain advocacy groups they're working with, or do you have to go find that out on your own?
Usually the PIs, and we meet quite regularly, and they'll communicate if there's some sort of outlet that we need to kind of tap into in terms of resource allocation.
Okay.
There are a lot of different groups within the institution itself, and I think part of my role as director is to kind of get my name out there and be a resource for my doctors in my department, as well as my staff, and also for the institution. So I see that as part of my outreach, within.
Yeah. And if it works, other organizations are going to copy best practices from you guys, right? So you could be like a thought leader. in the industry, one of the intrapreneurs. Because there's a lot of organizations like this, especially on the East Coast here. I mean, we've spent the week in New York, and all we've seen is academic institutions and then tiny little affiliations, like little offshoots of private sites, but it's dominated by these academic centers out here. So it's very important that we get this kind of research efficient, because you get a lot of benefits, but also some negative aspects, like slow startups, generally speed, bureaucracy.
I think partly having open communication with the sponsors is important in terms of timelines and expectations from the get-go,
Yeah.
letting them know what we need. I also do not like to be an add-on site after a study is started.
No.
I want to be at that first meeting with everybody else at the table, because I already know we're at a disadvantage.
And you've got to be super selective about what studies you take on, because once you commit, now you got to allocate resources to it. And with 85 studies, I mean, there's just not enough people to handle all these projects.
Right, and the complexity of protocols are changing.
Yeah, right.
How many studies a study coordinator can handle really depends. Is this a bread and butter, oral medication that patients are seen every 3 months?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it much more complex where there's an injectable every single week?
And a lot of the smaller sites watching are probably jealous, like, oh, Michelle, you don't have problems because you can get any study you want. Meanwhile, I'm here in Tucson, Arizona, and I can't get even one study for my private clinic. Michelle's got to deal with sponsors wanting to use Mount Sinai for the name, but not necessarily interested in getting you guys up and running all the time. Right?
I've had that where we have,
So they're wasting your time, basically.
not only that, they've sometimes we send them a budget proposal and then they delay knowing.
On purpose.
On purpose, because they delay knowing that they want our name listed as a site, but then they don't do what they need to do to start us up.
You see, the grass is always greener, but it's green everywhere. You just gotta wake up. All right. Anything else, Michelle? We gotta do a long-form podcast,
That'd be great.
like 30 minutes on random musings from the clinical trials guru. We'll have cameraman Chris Sauber on it too. He's jet
Great.
lagged today. Anything else? Any
No.
advice for, let's say, someone wanting to break into the industry? Do you think academic hospital is a good place to start?
I think there are great opportunities here, and I think there are great mentors that you could find to help teach you along the way.
That's another thing we didn't even talk about. That's, I think, a huge benefit of a place like this is mentorship. Because oftentimes at a private clinic, you get brought in, you have 2 coordinators, and they're busy, so you're on your own.
Right.
But here it seems like you have the infrastructure, support system.
We do. We have CRC1s, then they graduate into CRC2s, and then they graduate into clinical research supervisors, and then research managers. So we try to create a career ladder and professional development
You
along
see?
the way.
Do you guys have your own CRAs?
I don't have them here for this project, but I have in the past for other
Okay.
projects.
Like in-house CRAs?
In-house CRAs for NIH projects that are
NIH
multi-center
projects.
studies, yes.
See, there's a lot to talk about on that podcast. So that's a teaser. We're going to get that to you on Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru. Maybe next week. Yeah,
Great.
we'll set it up.
Okay.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Guru Nation. Take care.